Welcome back to the Jaco Report. So have charter schools underperformed while overselling themselves? We're going to take a look at that now. We'll start with Dr. Kathleen Sullivan Brown. She's Associate Professor of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies at the University of Missouri St. Louis, where she studies school reform efforts. Kathleen, good to see you again. Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
And Earl Sims. Earl is State Director of the Children's Education Council of Missouri. The council describes itself as a pro-reform organization and has been a supporter of the charter school movement. Earl, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I had mentioned in the piece leading into this, there was the newest study from Stanford University that dovetailed with a number of others that really cast doubt on whether or not charter schools are working. It said only 20% are doing better than the equivalent public schools in the area, and indeed over a third of them were doing significantly worse. You've looked at the literature. Is this an anomaly? Have studies shown this? What's the track record of charters been since '92 when they've been founded? What do we know?
Well, I think the Stanford study that just came out is a good one. Now, there's been some controversy about the methodology and how it was done. Charter school research is not easy to do. If you took two schools in St. Louis and you compared them, you'd have different boards, different students, different teachers, a different neighborhood. Some of the students are free and reduced lunch. Some are not in that category of students in poverty. So comparing charter schools is not easy to do, but the Stanford study was very rigorously done. I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about it and what these results mean.
What do you think they mean? I mean,
I think that the research that I have, and I've been following this for, charter schools started in about 1992. I've been following them since at least about 1999. And I think that the research results we have so far is that they're quite varied. You can have good schools, mediocre schools, and some pretty poor schools. And even our experience in St. Louis, we've had some schools that opened and closed rather quickly. We've had some that had to be shut down, and that's true around the country. There are some that are good schools with some grassroots support from parents and communities. But there have been a number of them in states like Arizona and California, which have had a lot of charter schools because they have legislation that really promotes them. They've had schools that have had to be shut down because of significant financial irregularities. I mean, if people are using it as an opportunity to make money, and I don't think anybody's ever made a lot of money on education, certainly not public education.
Earl, given the Stanford study and the decidedly mixed results overall, I mean, are charters, after 18 years of experience with charters, do you think charters are the hope for education that everybody thought they would be when they were first started in Minneapolis back in '92?
Well, I think the beauty of the charter model is that if they are not performing up to par, that they are closed down. I think you're seeing some studies that have been conducted out of Boston, some studies that have been conducted with Boston charter schools versus Boston's, they're called pilot schools, the equivalent of our magnet schools, what we would call magnet schools here in St. Louis. They're showing charters performing better, and those are studies that are based on students who are lotteried in, and I think you have to make sure and look at that. The interim session, the legislature studied charter schools in all of Missouri and found that there are some better and some worse, as she had recently stated, and I would like to see some results of that when they take out the magnet schools. And some do perform better and some do perform worse than your traditional district schools.
Well, if we've got a quote mixed bag, and charter schools have not been head and shoulders above public schools and demonstrably better at most points, I guess the point would be, what is the point of having them? In other words, if it's a mixed bag, but overall it kind of evens out, why have them in the first place?
Well, I think when you're sending kids to a school, there are some, Confluence, which UMSL sponsors, has shown to be probably the best charter school in the area of St. Louis. You're seeing some great results at some of the schools in Kansas City with innovative programs like language immersion and also University Academy in Kansas City. And there are some efforts to duplicate those types of models here that are showing some early promise. KIP, a National Knowledge is Power program. KIP is a very well-known national national charter school operator. They've opened a school in St. Louis recently, last summer, and they're also looking to expand. So I think they've had some great results nationwide with schools that they're looking to model and replicate here in St. Louis.
And Kathleen, one of the things that struck me as ironic, I guess, is I covered the last school board meeting, and here is a school system that is, X million dollars in the hole, is having to cut teachers, is having to close schools, and suddenly they rode like the cavalry to the rescue of 800 kids in the Ethel Hedgeman Lyle Academy, which suddenly just went out of business with a scathing letter from its sponsor, Missouri Baptist University, accusing the operators of the school of endangering the health, safety, and welfare of the kids who were there. I mean, doesn't it strike... It strikes many people as counterintuitive. Charter schools originally set up as a positive alternative to public schools, but here we get a charter school that's being blasted as a danger to the health of kids, and the public schools come in and take it over so the kids can finish can finish years.
So the public schools are riding to the rescue. They're the cavalry.
Well, in this case.
In this case. Well, we also had Thurgood Marshall, which closed, and that was 1,000 students. So I think one problem is that you've got this, and Missouri has a weak charter school law, according to all the National Charter School Association, because we only allow charter schools in St. Louis and Kansas City. So a lot of people would ask, if they're such a great idea, why do we limit those to St. Louis and Kansas City?
What's the answer?
Well, it's because it's seen as a solution for urban schools. And even though in some parts of the state, for example, Springfield, they were asking for charter schools and they weren't allowed to.